You have met them before, perhaps without even realizing it. They are the ones who look you in the eyes and smile when you succeed, yet somewhere in that gaze, there's a quiet flicker of something darker. You feel their presence close to you, yet their words somehow leave you weaker than before. Carl Jung, the brilliant mind who mapped the labyrinth of human psychology, understood that danger does not always roar like a wild beast. Often, it wears the warm mask of a friend, a lover, or a guide, and approaches us with a soft touch rather than a violent shove. The most dangerous people in our lives can sometimes be the ones we trust the most. Jung believed that the unconscious mind possesses a deep, instinctive radar for danger, a subtle voice that warns us when someone's energy feels wrong. But we are experts at silencing this voice, convincing ourselves that we are imagining things or that we're just being overly sensitive. In doing so, we allow harm to creep in quietly and take root in our lives. The first of these dangerous types often arrive as helpers, but their help always comes with strings attached. They listen closely to your fears, your struggles, and your insecurities, but they are not listening to heal you. They are collecting information. They file away every detail you share like ammunition, saving it for a time when they can use it to gain control over you. At first, they will seem like your greatest supporter, offering you advice, comfort, and even opportunities. But slowly, they begin to shape your decisions, steering you in directions that benefit them rather than you. You will start to notice that you are no longer making choices freely, but rather reacting to the invisible strings they are pulling behind the scenes. Jung understood that manipulation at the psychological level is not always obvious, which is what makes it so dangerous. These people don't just influence your behavior, they alter your perception of reality itself. They can make you doubt your own thoughts, question your own memories, and even distrust the instincts that were warning you about them in the first place. This kind of danger is like a slow-acting poison. It does not destroy you all at once. It seeps into your mind drop by drop until one day you realize you no longer recognize the person you've become. They thrive on keeping you dependent, ensuring that you never quite feel strong enough to walk away from them. Then there is the second kind of dangerous person. Jung would have urged you to avoid the eternal victim. They always have a story of how life has wronged them, how others have betrayed them, and how the world is endlessly unfair to them. On the surface, they may appear harmless, even deserving of compassion, but their presence can be just as destructive. Being around them, you will start to feel a heavy emotional weight pressing down on you. They are skilled at drawing you into their constant crises, making you feel responsible for fixing their problems or rescuing them from the messes they repeatedly create. You may find yourself exhausted, drained, and sacrificing your own well-being for someone who never takes steps to help themselves. The danger here is not in obvious harm, but in the slow erosion of your boundaries and self-worth. These people will unconsciously or sometimes consciously manipulate your empathy, making you feel guilty for wanting space or prioritizing your own needs. The more you give, the more they take, and the cycle never ends because their victimhood is not a phase, it is an identity. Jung understood that we must be careful where we invest our emotional energy because certain people act like black holes, absorbing every ounce of compassion we have without ever shining any light back in return. You cannot heal someone who does not wish to change, and you cannot save someone who has built their life around being saved. What makes both of these types truly dangerous is that they rarely see themselves as harmful. The manipulator believes they are guiding you for your own good, and the victim believes they are simply unlucky or misunderstood. But the impact on your life can be profound, leaving you drained, disoriented, and disconnected from your own strength. And the most unsettling part, they may not even be aware of the damage they cause, yet the damage is real, deep, and lasting. This is why Jung insisted that recognizing these patterns early is essential, because the longer they remain in your life, the harder it becomes to free yourself from their grip. They are the kind of people who can twist your perception, entangle your emotions, and leave you carrying a weight that was never yours to bear. The key to protecting yourself is not confrontation or dramatic exits, it is awareness. When you see them for what they are, their power over you begins to fade. Some people don't destroy you by taking from you directly, they destroy you by planting seeds in your mind that turn into choking vines over time. You walk away from conversations with them feeling unsettled, unsure of yourself, and questioning whether you are as capable as you once believed. Their words sound casual, even caring, but beneath them lies an intent to subtly diminish you. This third type is the chronic critic, the person who always manages to find a flaw in everything you do, no matter how well you do it. They are quick to disguise their attacks as just being honest or helping you improve, but honesty without kindness is cruelty in disguise. Jung recognized that such people project their own inner dissatisfaction onto others, and their need to bring you down is often rooted in their inability to lift themselves up. When you spend enough time around them, you begin to carry their voice inside your own head. Even in their absence, you hear echoes of their disapproval, and you start preemptively doubting yourself before they even get a chance to speak. This is one of the most subtle forms of psychological damage because it turns your inner voice into your own worst enemy. Over time, the critic can strip away your self-esteem without ever raising their voice or showing outward aggression. They may even position themselves as your mentor or truth-teller, convincing you that without their constant corrections, you would fall apart. The truth is that they fear your growth because your growth threatens to expose their stagnation. But if the critic wounds the mind, the fourth type wounds the soul. This is the envious saboteur, the person who cannot stand to see you thrive. Envy is a dangerous emotion because it often hides behind smiles and congratulations, and Jung knew that envy, when left unacknowledged, could transform into resentment that corrodes relationships from the inside out. These are the people who, upon hearing good news from you, experience not joy but discomfort. They may pretend to be happy for you, but their body language, their tone, or their choice of words betrays a different reality. Sometimes they will subtly downplay your achievements, making them seem less significant than they truly are. If you get a promotion, they might remind you of someone who did it faster, or suggest that you just got lucky. If you accomplish a long-term goal, they might focus on what you still haven't done. The goal of the envious saboteur is not always to openly attack you, but to make you second-guess whether your success is deserved. Jung believed envy was a projection, a reflection of the other person's unfulfilled potential and unresolved bitterness. Instead of doing the hard work of growth, the envious person takes the easier path of bringing others down to their level. They are not necessarily evil, but their presence can be toxic, and over time, you may find yourself shrinking your own victories just to avoid their reactions. The most dangerous thing about envy is that it can turn allies into silent adversaries. These people may never openly harm you, but they may withhold support, subtly undermine your confidence, or even steer opportunities away from you when they think no one is watching. The damage is slow, quiet, and easy to overlook until the consequences become undeniable. When you recognize either the chronic critic or the envious saboteur, it is vital to protect your energy. The critic will make you feel like you are never enough, and the envious will make you afraid of becoming more. Both can trap you in a mental prison where your sense of worth is dictated by someone else's limitations. Jung's advice was not to confront such people with anger, because doing so often fuels their behavior. Instead, he urged awareness and quiet disengagement, reducing the space they have in your life and strengthening your own inner voice so their influence weakens over time. One of the hardest truths to accept is that some of these people may be friends, colleagues, or even family members you care deeply about. It is tempting to believe that with enough patience and kindness, you can change them. But, as Jung warned, the shadow in another person cannot be healed by someone who refuses to face their own. And so, the only true way to protect yourself is to set boundaries that protect your mental clarity and emotional stability. You can love someone from a distance without letting them dismantle the foundation of who you are. And if they accuse you of being cold or selfish for stepping back, remember, those are the words of someone who has been feeding off your light for too long. Once you learn to see the chronic critic and the envious saboteur for what they are, their power begins to dissolve. You stop taking their words as truth and you start recognizing them as reflections of their own wounds, and in that moment you reclaim a piece of yourself they had quietly stolen. Some people harm you not through criticism or envy, but by eroding the very sense of who you are. They wrap themselves around your identity like a vine around a tree, until you can no longer tell where they end and you begin. This is not love, not friendship, but control disguised as care, and by the time you see it for what it has already taken root deep in your life. The fifth dangerous type is the controller, the person who cannot stand to let you make choices for yourself. They may seem deeply invested in your life, always ready with opinions about what you should do, who you should be with, and which path you should take. At first, it might even feel comforting to have someone so involved, but comfort turns to confinement when you realize their involvement leaves no room for your own voice. Jung understood that control often springs from fear of loss, fear of change, fear of the unknown. But when that fear drives someone's behavior, they will work relentlessly to keep you within a narrow space they can manage. Every step you take toward independence will feel like a threat to them, and they will respond not only with guilt and manipulation, but sometimes with outright hostility, masked as concern. Controllers rarely admit that their behavior is about power, because even to themselves they prefer the illusion that they are simply helping. They frame their interference as looking out for you or just wanting the best for you, but beneath those words is an unspoken message: you cannot be trusted with your own life. The longer you stay under their influence, the more you begin to internalize that belief, until making independent choices feels not only uncomfortable, but almost dangerous. The most insidious controllers are those who mix their interference with acts of love or generosity. They may provide you with help, support, or resources, but there is always an unspoken price: you must remain within the boundaries they set. And if you dare to step beyond those limits, they will not hesitate to remind you of everything they've done for you, as though your freedom is a debt that can never truly be repaid. This kind of control is difficult to break because it often comes from people we love: parents who just want to protect us, partners who claim they can't live without us, friends who only want what's best. It is wrapped in the language of affection, which makes it harder to see as a form of imprisonment. Yet Jung warned that any relationship built on the suppression of one's autonomy will eventually corrode the spirit. But if the controller limits your freedom, the final dangerous type threatens something even deeper: your truth. This sixth type is the deceiver, the person who lives comfortably in a world of half-truths, omissions, and lies. They're not always malicious in the way you might expect. Some lie to protect themselves, others to create an image, and some simply because honesty feels foreign to them. With the deceiver, reality becomes unstable in ways that are often subtle at first. You begin to question whether events happened the way you remember, or whether you misunderstood entirely. They may assure you that your concerns are unfounded, even when your instincts scream otherwise. Over time, this leads to what Jung recognized as a deeply destructive psychological phenomenon: gaslighting, where your grasp on truth slowly slips away under the weight of repeated denial. The deceiver thrives in ambiguity. They avoid clear answers, shift their stories mid-conversation, and redirect blame when confronted. They may even fabricate details to support their version of events, ensuring that you feel outnumbered by the facts they create. Conversations with them leave you feeling dizzy, as if you stepped into a fog where nothing can be held firmly, and the longer you remain in that fog, the more you start to doubt your ability to navigate without their guidance. One of the most damaging aspects of dealing with a deceiver is the erosion of trust, not just in them, but in yourself. When someone consistently denies reality or bends it to suit their needs, you start to lose confidence in your own perceptions. You begin to second-guess your memory, your understanding, even your intuition. This is not just emotional harm, it is a dismantling of your internal compass, leaving you adrift in someone else's fabricated reality. Jung believed that truth is more than a moral virtue, it is a foundation of psychological stability. When the truth is twisted or concealed, the human mind becomes disoriented, vulnerable to manipulation, and dependent on external narratives for a sense of certainty. The deceiver exploits this vulnerability, ensuring you rely on them for clarity even though they are the ones creating the confusion in the first place. Some deceivers lie boldly, leaving no room for doubt. Others are far more dangerous. They lie by omission, withholding key details that would change everything if you knew them. They let you operate with incomplete information, guiding your choices without you even realizing it. In this way, they don't just mislead you, they control the framework of your reality. both the controller and the deceiver can be difficult to identify because they often cloak their behavior in good intentions. The controller says they are protecting you from harm. The deceiver says they are sparing your feelings. But intentions do not erase harm, and the damage these people cause often runs deeper than the wounds left by more obvious enemies. When you step back and view these patterns through Jung's lens, a chilling realization emerges. These 6 types of dangerous people are not always strangers. Sometimes they are partners, friends, colleagues, or family members we have known for years. Their danger lies not in how loudly they harm us, but in how quietly they reshape us, molding our decisions, altering our beliefs, and warping our perception of ourselves. The moment you recognize these patterns is the moment the spell begins to break. It is not about becoming suspicious of everyone, nor about closing your heart to connection. It is about listening to the inner voice you've been trained to ignore, the quiet, instinctive feeling that warns you something is off. That voice is not paranoia. It is the wisdom of your unconscious, sharpened through countless generations of survival. Awareness, Jung would say, is the first step toward freedom. And once you see these 6 dangerous types clearly, you can begin the work of protecting your mind, your boundaries, and your sense of self from the shadows they cast. Because in the end, the most dangerous people are not the ones who threaten you openly. They are the ones who convince you they are your shelter, all while slowly dismantling the walls that protect you from the storm. The rain had stopped, yet the earth still breathed in quiet whispers, carrying the scent of wet soil and ancient trees. Shadows stretched longer now, bending and curling in strange shapes along the forest floor. It was as if the land itself remembered something the world had forgotten. Every step forward felt like trespassing into a realm that belonged to something far older than man. The silence was thick, not empty, but heavy with the presence of unseen eyes. You could almost feel the air shifting, like an unseen curtain parting just enough to let you through. The path ahead was narrow, lined with jagged stones that seemed to hum faintly under your feet. Each one felt like a marker, a reminder that you were walking in the footprints of those who had come before and perhaps never returned. Yet something pulled you forward, as if the forest itself demanded you see what lay ahead. Somewhere deep inside, there was an unease, but it was not the kind that made you want to turn back. It was the kind that told you the truth was close, just beyond reach. That if you kept going, you might touch something forbidden and never be the same again. The trees thickened, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their roots like veins reaching out to trip the careless traveler. Moss clung to everything, not green but a deep, almost black shade, as though it had been feeding on something other than sunlight. The air felt warmer now, heavier, each breath a little harder to take. And then you heard it low, rhythmic, almost like breathing, but deeper and more deliberate. It wasn't coming from ahead or behind, but from everywhere, all at once. The sound seemed to seep through the ground, vibrating faintly in your bones. You paused, unsure if you were intruding or being invited. A strange light began to emerge through the trees, not the golden glow of a fire, nor the cold silver of moonlight. It was something else entirely, a pale, shifting radiance that seemed alive. The closer you moved toward it, the more it danced away, as if leading you deeper, guiding yet testing you. The forest floor changed beneath you, the soil giving way to smooth, dark stone etched with faint lines. The carvings were so old they had eroded into near oblivion, yet still they pulsed faintly, as if remembering their purpose. You could not read them, but you felt them like echoes of a voice speaking directly into your thoughts. A clearing appeared, round and perfectly symmetrical, as if nature itself had been shaped by unseen hands. In its center stood a single object, tall, thin, and impossibly black, a pillar that seemed to drink in the light around it. It wasn't just dark, it was absence, a void in the shape of a thing. As you approached, the air shifted again, warmer now, almost embracing. You realized the rhythmic sound from before had grown louder, and with it came the faint impression of words. They weren't in any language you knew, but their meaning seeped into your mind like water through cracks. The words spoke not to your ears, but to the very marrow of your being. They told of beginnings that had no start and endings that never came. Of cycles turning endlessly, each life a drop in an ocean of repeating storms. You felt both insignificant and chosen, a paradox that burned and comforted at the same time. Your fingers itched to touch the pillar, though every instinct screamed against it. Something in its presence pulled you, promising knowledge, power, or perhaps an understanding so vast it would shatter you. But the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if you would dare. When your hand met its surface, it wasn't cold nor warm. It was simply there, more real than anything else you had ever touched. In that instant, you weren't in the clearing anymore. The world around you dissolved into a vast, starless void. Yet you weren't floating, you were falling endlessly into nothing. Images began to erupt all around you, flashes of lives you didn't live, wars you didn't fight, faces you didn't know yet somehow loved. You saw cities crumble into dust, only for new ones to rise in the same place. You saw yourself, over and over, in different bodies, different centuries, all